follow your dreams and keep your eyes on the prize. And that prize should be leaving the world in a better state than when you found it. When the lion wakes up and it looks at me and I see it at the same time, I spring one way and it springs the other, thankfully, that you could combine time in nature with time spent adventuring. 3 guys with spinal cord injuries undertaking a big expedition in the subarctic. Just start near your own home, I think. Honestly, you can have so many amazing adventures just close to home.
If you have ever wanted to understand why we should be asking for nature's help on mindsets, adventures, and more, then you're in the right place. So, welcome to Maximise Nature. Welcome to Maximise Nature. Today's guest is NIALL McCANN. NIALL, to put it simply, lives and breathes the natural world. From skiing across Greenland to cycling across the Himalayas, he's done it all. On top of this, NIALL is also an official explorer for National Geographic and an award-winning presenter on the BBC, the Discovery Channel, and many more. We're going to delve into the thought process behind his adventures, as well as how he thinks nature can provide the helping hands to people like you and me. Then, we can take his good thoughts and put them in a travel bag, ready to use in our next adventure. Let's introduce NIALL to everyone. First of all, thank you so much, NIALL, for coming on. I know you have a busy, hectic schedule, and we all really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm honoured to be here. Thanks, Max.
Thank you. So, NIALL, can we explore a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Of course. So when people ask, who are you? I tend to respond that I'm a biologist, but that's quite a broad term. So to knuckle down into that a little bit more, I'm a reformed academic who decided that academia wasn't my route to have a really positive impact on the planet, like it is for some people. And I decided my route to have a really positive impact was through direct action conservation. So in my case, what I did was help to set up an NGO to try and protect national parks at risk of failure and all of the animals that live in them. And through that work, I feel I've had much more of a positive impact on the planet than I would have done in any other career had I gone down a different route. So I'm a reformed academic turned conservationist, loosely bannered under a biologist.
Absolutely perfect. I mean, yeah, to be honest, nature, the classroom in nature isn't something I think I'd ever go down. So I feel like this podcast is the perfect way for me to get myself out there, as it were. How did you turn your passion for nature, or should I say, how did your passion for nature lead you into a career of exploration and broadcasting?
Goodness. Well, yes, I was really lucky to grow up in a family of biologists. Both my parents were biologists and both of my brothers were biologists. So family table discussions were always around things to do with nature. And all of our weekends were spent in nature. All of our holidays were spent in nature. So I was always just immersed in nature from a very young age. And then it was just natural to take that on to my degree. Did a degree in zoology. And then after that, again, I just naturally slipped into volunteering for a research project. In my case, it was out in Namibia, helping someone doing their PhD on black-backed jackals. And it just all felt like a natural progression, going from being in a family of biologists to doing biology myself to then actively being engaged in research projects. I ran a couple of expeditions that I'd organised myself, and that started to get me into the groove of things. And what I realised that I was particularly interested in was not the hardcore science, not the really important statistics or any of that. It was going to interesting places and seeing what's there, basically. And partially that's because of a lack of ability on statistics. I was a really bad statistician. I love statistics. I'm just rubbish at them. And I wish I was better. But it's enabled me to have a much more interesting career than if I was a better statistician, I suppose. So instead of focusing on data, what I focused on was gathering interesting information. And that meant running expeditions to far off parts of the world and seeing what was there. And when you do that type of thing, if you go to far-flung places and you come back with images of stuff that not many people have seen before, then almost inevitably broadcast media starts to take an interest in what you're up to. So my image would appear in local papers and university magazines and that type of thing. And then TV production companies start to get wind of this type of thing and they contact you. And it can be a very, very long process from first talking about potentially being involved in broadcasting to actually being involved in broadcasting. And in my case, it was about a decade. So from those first conversations, which was actually with the BBC at the Natural History Unit, through to first appearing on television, was 10 years. And that was 10 years of doing a lot of really fun expeditions and building my CV, building my back catalogue of imagery and experience. And just finally, one of these production companies that came knocking managed to get something over the line. And then that just opened up so many other, frankly, unbelievable opportunities. I feel working in TV kind of gives you just a free pass to have immense experiences.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel the same as organising yourself, because it's like going on a package holiday. Someone's basically organised for you. And you go out there and you absorb all of these wonderful things, and then you come back. But you don't get anywhere near the same sense of satisfaction as you would if you'd organised your own thing. So if I look back at the things that have been really significant in my career, I actually think organising my own expedition with 3 friends to Bolivia when I was 21 was a much more formative experience than spending a month in Nepal filming tigers, which someone else organised for me, even though the actual experiences I had in Nepal are almost unrivaled. I got charged by a tiger twice and had all kinds of other ridiculous experiences, but it was just given to me. And nothing feels as good when it's given to you as it does when you go out and get it yourself. And that's the thing about doing your own thing in your career. You're making your own luck, and it feels a lot more satisfying. But that's not to detract too much. The frankly wonderful experiences I had making television. It was really enjoyable, hugely enjoyable. And of course gave me an opportunity to speak about nature to quite literally millions and millions of people. It's the programs I've made have been shown in over 80 countries, and goodness knows how many people have seen it. And it's lovely to think that I've had a bit of a positive impact on people's impressions of nature all around the world as a result of that career.
1,000,000%. I definitely, even though this is quite a new podcast, I see exactly what you mean by you want to just do it yourself and get that satisfaction out of it. Because at the end of the day, the goal is to be consistent with it, really. Just hearing about it gives not only me so much hope as an aspiring podcaster, it's just putting in the time.
Well, no, I think that's a really important point, though, Max, that you make, is that this stuff doesn't just happen by chance. And
overnight, yeah.
Free. It doesn't happen overnight. It is absolute graft from start to finish. And yeah, the TV thing is just one part of it. Getting a PhD is just graft, basically. You just work your ass off in order to make this type of thing happen. Yeah. Setting up an NGO and then making that work, that's now been 8.5 years of graft. But the experiences you get from that are phenomenal, and the life lessons you learn and everything else, it is so worth it. But yeah, good things come to those that put the work in. I think it's an important thing to describe.
Yeah.
Another thing on that career front, related to what you were just talking about, it might look like there's an obvious straight line from NIALL aged 18 enrolling in a degree course to NIALL aged 43 executive director of an NGO. But there was never a straight line for me looking forward. Like, there's a million different options. You never know whether you're taking the right one or whether you're taking a dead end. And of course, 90% of the options you do take do turn out to be dead ends. And so you backtrack and you try something else, and then you find out what works and what doesn't work, what you really enjoy, what you're good at. And over the many, many years, you finally land at something resembling a career, which might look like a straight line, but actually it's been such a wiggly path to get there, with so many false starts and false promise and all of that. But again, it's always worth it if you have your eyes on the prize. And for me, that prize is trying to have a positive impact on the planet and on nature. And I had that as the end goal. And I tried to find as many ways to make that work as possible. And so I've always kept 10 different irons burning in the fire, as I still do now in my mid-40s, just because you never know which one's going to catch and really have that massive impact and scale your impact on the planet.
Where am I now? 4 months into a job in Peterborough. I'd never thought I'd be in Peterborough, but I am. And to be fair, it's quite fun. Going back to your point about you essentially having 1,000,001 eggs in 1,000,000 different baskets. That is something that I've heard so many top professionals in their respective fields, whether it be basketball or like athletics or nature conservation, etc. They all have that. And I think for me, I was very lucky to figure that out early, because it's allowed me to go and do so many things. Like last year, I just spent, as you know, traveling. So I finally got to do that, but I just tried to build it up essentially. But I think the key is just to build it up, really.
Totally. A little bit of advice I got from an uncle who'd been professionally quite successful when I was very young was always think about building your CV. And I'd never really thought about it in curriculum vitae terms. I was always thinking about building my life experiences, building that stock of experiences. By doing all of these different things, by trying so many things, you are building a really good CV, as well as an amazing stock of experiences and memories and everything to sit back on. And that's a differentiator. When we're looking at the professional environment at the moment, there's a huge number of highly talented, very dedicated, very passionate young people wanting to go out and get the types of jobs that you and I want. And there's not that many of those jobs. So what differentiates you from the rest? And if you've built this amazing stock of experiences, you've volunteered your time, you've tried various jobs, you've done all of these things, you start to differentiate yourself. And having 1,000,000 different plates spinning at one time may be disconcerting, maybe stressful at times, but it just gives you so much more of a chance of succeeding in life and having that impact that you want to have.
I think for anyone listening, and even me recording this right now, that is quite literally the key to everything. Or it's one of the most underrated keys, as it were. Because of the amount of times I've seen on Instagram that, oh no, just do this. You just need to do a lot of things and try and do them as well as you can.
Yeah, I completely. And it's also fun doing lots of stuff.
It is.
Trying loads of different things. I met a guy a few years ago up a tree in Honduras. His name is Waldo Etherington. And Waldo's an astonishing man for lots of reasons. When I met him, he would have been maybe just 20. So really young, never been to university. All he wanted to do was go and climb trees. And now he climbs trees better than anyone else in the world. And does a lot of rope rigging safety for movies and film and TV and everything. He's an extraordinary man. But one of the things that I found most amazing about him was that at the age of 18, he had committed to doing 3 different courses every year. And that could be a course in anything. It could be a course in knitting, in poetry, in professional rope rigging, whatever it was. He committed to doing 3 courses a year. So now he's maybe 36. So he's got 18 years worth of 3 courses a year. So he's got 54 different qualifications under his belt in that time, just by committing whatever it is, a week per course per year. What an extraordinary thing to do.
That's true.
In terms of, broadening your quiver of arrows that you're using professionally and personally, building up an amazing stock of experiences, having really interesting times as well, and massively building your CV. That he has made himself utterly indispensable in all of the jobs that he has done, partially by simply knowing more than everyone else, because he's got 54 qualifications.
That's crazy. Anyway, who or what inspired you to take adventuring out into the outdoors to this extraordinary height?
My parents were a massive influence on me, and by far and away the biggest influence. If you go back another generation, my mum's dad was a polar explorer. There are actually a couple of bits of the Arctic named after him, 2 bits in Canada. There's a peninsula and a mountain that are named after him. And he also named various other bits, but like so, one's named. There's a lake named after my grandmother, and that type of stuff. So we had his example, but it was only really a memory of him or a legacy of him because he died when I was 2, so I never knew him. I just knew about him. But in terms of first-hand inspiration, my parents were just brilliant. At every opportunity, we were outside, and we were combining little adventures, be that cycling or climbing or hiking, whatever it was, or canoeing, with nature watching. So for me, there was always an amazing overlap. The Venn diagram between adventure, time in adventuring and time in nature. The Venn diagram was almost a circle. So I always saw that you could combine time in nature with time spent adventuring. And my parents are definitely to thank for that.
100%. Like, I'm the same. My parents, I mean, bless her, my mum retired when my older sister was born, so that was 25 years ago. And she just spent all the time, teaching us about nature. So for context, there's a pond up by me that I'd always get up early and go cycling with my mum and my dad and my sister, and we just skim rocks, and it was so much fun. Like, I feel like that's where this whole journey for me sort of started. And I'm guessing you have a kind of similar story, which has led you to row across the Atlantic and do all this crazy stuff.
Yeah, but it starts with skimming rocks. So I still I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and her face the first time she realised you could throw a rock into the water and it makes a splash. I've still got a photograph of that face she made. She's obviously just staggered, and that's how these things start. Yeah, one day you're skimming rocks, next day you're rowing a boat across the Atlantic. But there's what looks like a straight line between the two things. Again, it's a pretty wiggly line with lots of a million different spaces between them. But that's how these things start. You seed that enthusiasm early and then just let it grow, and then that comes down to the individual whether they nurture that or not. So you clearly had an enormous passion for this. Your parents gave you the opportunity to express that passion, but then you still had to express it. And my parents gave me the opportunity to express my passion in nature and adventure, but I still had to go and express it, and that's where the hard work comes. You and I have got this. The privilege that our parents gave us was the permission to do this type of thing. The thought that being outside in nature, having adventures was normal and acceptable. Most people don't even have that. They don't know that they can spend time in nature. They don't know that they can go climb a mountain. It's just not on their radar. The most amazing privilege I ever had from my parents was just putting those things on my radar and making it seem normal and accessible. But then I had to choose to take it on myself, and that's where that personal grit and determination and your self-identity becomes really important. And if that becomes a part of your identity, then you get to take it to the next level.
Definitely. I'd say for me, one of the biggest trips/experiences in my life was going to Zambia back in sixth form and just looking after orphan children. Oh my days, it was incredible. Don't get me wrong, the what's it called? Victoria Falls was simply mad. But the experiences that I got to go and experience different cultures, I'll probably put it above that.
Totally. It's just incredibly valuable. Like, you can't really replace the experience you have in other cultures here. So people that haven't travelled, I would encourage, go out and travel as soon as you can.
Yeah.
So much more likely to be empathetic to other human beings if you've experienced other human cultures. Spending time in and around poverty also gives us an amazing sense of privilege of what we've got here as well. It's easy to be frustrated at our lot here because we've been shat on by the government for the last 14 years, and cost of living crisis is real here. But when you spend time in real poverty, gives you a sense of perspective that we still have an amazing amount here in this beautiful country of ours that many other people don't have access to. And one of those biggest things is the privilege to choose. You and I could choose to be anything we wanted, really. Whereas most people in most parts of the world, their life choices are pretty limited. And that's a remarkable thing about growing up in a place like the UK and having free education, is it gives you that opportunity to do anything you want in the world. You then need a huge amount of other positive things, positive home environment, positive school environments, all of those opportunities as well. But that starting point of not necessarily needing to worry about where our next meal is coming from, it just gives us the opportunity to choose so much more in our lives, and we're very lucky for that. But you only really get that from travel. If you just stayed here in the UK or wherever you're listening from, you really struggle to have that empathy with other cultures and other people and the struggles that everyone else is going through.
You pretty much summed up that trip in about, what was it, half a minute or so? No.
I've spent a long time on TV, so I'm used to summarising things quickly.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, what's your thought process when deciding what project to conquer? And why is it so important to you that you share your experiences with people? Yeah,
so I'd never use the word conquer for starters, but I love taking on challenges. And then, also my thought process, I guess it's just completely... I see a picture of someone somewhere and go, oh, that looks nice. I'd love to try a bit of that. The classic keeping up with the Joneses, fear of missing out, all of that is a part of it. But then it goes really deep for me because of my family connections. The amount of time my grandfather spent in the Arctic, the amount of time my dad spent in Antarctica and doing all these things, research my mum did in East Africa and all over the world. All of these gave me a sense that I should be doing these things as well as I want to do these things. So I feel in many ways I'm kind of carrying the torch for my family, but that's not sufficient. You have to also have the drive inside you to do it. And that comes from just a huge desire to experience these things. So I did a trip last year, ended up being 11 days to ski across Vatnajökull, the largest ice cap in Western Europe. And that was all for reasons, 3 guys, myself included, with spinal cord injuries, trying to undertake a big challenge. So I had a real purpose for that mission. That was a real purpose. 3 guys with spinal cord injuries undertaking a big expedition in the subarctic. But other trips I've done have just been because I love the idea of going somewhere with beautiful scenery or wonderful wildlife. So the first safari I ever went on would have been in Tanzania, Ngorongoro Crater. And it was just because here is this caldera filled with wildlife. And what a wonderful place to go and have those incredible encounters with nature. So my thought processes vary along the, depending on what it is, but always I want to have these wonderful experiences. How do I go about making it happen? And some of these things require a bit of sponsorship, some of them you pay for yourselves, but I always feel that if you're not willing to pay for an expedition yourself or an adventure yourself, then it's not the right one for you. If you're willing to fork out $5,000 to go to Guyana, spend 6 weeks in the jungle looking for anacondas and giant otters, if you're not willing to spend that money to do that, then that probably wasn't the right thing for you. But if you are willing to spend that money, then my God, will you get some incredible experiences out of it.
That is unbelievably true. I will say, though, quite an interesting point I sort of got from what you just said is that the fact that your mindsets are so different depending on what your, say, challenge is or what you're going to do. And I think that is a really good point for anyone listening, because it goes back to the point we're not all the same. Different things will not trigger us, what's the word, will inspire us. We will want to do different things. It's just how the best way is to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, people have been asking about, because I have 2 essentially parallel careers. My career that I mainly do is that I run a conservation NGO, so I'm a biologist, I'm a conservationist. And in my parallel career, which is principally like extracurricular, is these expeditions, the ones that aren't really related to biology, oceans, ice caps, mountains, that type of thing. And the way I've been pithily summarising that recently is that nature is my purpose, my mission, and adventure is my passion. But then if I think about the trips I've gone on, maybe I'd even flip that I now need, if I'm going to do an expedition that isn't related to my career, then it has to have purpose as opposed to just be passion. Whereas previously I'd have said those trips, like cycling the Himalayas and canoeing the Yukon, rowing the Atlantic, all these other things, that was just for the passion of it, just because I loved doing those things and still do. Whereas now, because I'm married and because I have a 5-year-old and I can't really justify being away as much, those types of trips also have to have inherent purpose to them for me to make that family sacrifice to go on them. So it's flipped, I guess, since becoming a father. That my motivations for doing non-career related expeditions have to be slightly different because it has so much more of an impact on other people, on my wife and my daughter. Whereas before, when I wasn't married and when I didn't have a child, I was just thinking about myself really, and the passion I have for these types of things. Whereas these days I also have to have purpose layered on top.
I think that is pretty much how I feel about life in general, really, because your priorities, your passions, etc., will change. Like, I know mine have. Definitely. How old am I? 22. Yeah, I did not have a passion for jumping out of planes, but I do now.
Yeah.
But anyway, but no, I think going back to the point, your passions and your desires and your priorities change. It's just about finding what works for you.
I've also noticed this. I've noticed this in lots of younger researchers as well now. People always love spending time abroad doing conservation research or geographical research or whatever it is. And it's wonderful to do that. But there's ever more pressure on people to only do that type of trip abroad and therefore spend the carbon miles to get there if you've got real purpose behind your trip as well. Doing things just for the sake of it is becoming increasingly unacceptable within certain circles, whereas layering on purpose to these passion projects is becoming a bit more in vogue. And I found that quite interesting discussing with young researchers who are wanting to focus as much of their time on the UK as possible to minimise their carbon impact, but they still want to have these trips abroad and the types of experiences that I had when carbon sequestration and carbon emissions weren't such at the forefront of our mind. They want to have those experiences too, but they feel they need a reason to do that. And so layering a proper purpose to these trips has become more important for them.
Well, as a young researcher myself, I currently work in hydraulic modelling, which is assessing flood risk and everything. And my purpose behind that is I eventually want to go into hazard management, which is looking at the massive picture. But for me, it's like you said earlier about the zigzag career path. It's how I find that to work and how I can slowly build it up. But I really do agree with how important it is to have a purpose. Otherwise, that passion will just go like that. And I mean, you can't.
Well, there's a million ways you can apply your career expertise to projects abroad as well. Just look at what happened in Valencia the other day. Look at the floods in Pakistan and Nepal over the last couple of years. There's a real place for understanding the impact of flooding on the world in the face of climate change, because we are going to be seeing so many more extreme weather events and more flood damage. So many opportunities to travel and apply your expertise around the world.
When going through the stages of an expedition, from planning to completion, you must have had to face some surreal mental, physical and emotional challenges. What would you say these are, and what were some of the biggest obstacles you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I guess with really big expeditions that take a lot of planning and a lot of funding, it's the fundraising is the hardest thing. If it's a trip that's relatively inexpensive, then you don't need to worry about that side of things, and that just takes such an enormous weight off your mind. Whereas if you're having to also fundraise for a trip, it's just painful. You end up writing a million emails and getting no responses. You're always worried about your ability to make this thing happen that you're so passionate about. So I've had a few trips that have been very, very expensive and have needed fundraising for. But most I haven't. Most have been relatively affordable, and the complexity in that case is really logistical. Like, how do we get from A to B in a country where travel's really limited, or where there's quite a lot of civil strife, instability, violence, all those types of things? And then the classic ones is putting together the right team. Classic thing is, do you have the right team to do that expedition? Are you with the right people you get on with? Really. Mm-hmm. And people that have the skills and the expertise that you need to make that expedition happen. And I've been on trips where the people I chose to go with didn't necessarily have all the skills, but they were such amazing company that it didn't matter. Like, as long as you can cover for their skill shortage, they're just brilliant to be with. And sometimes all you need is a hug and someone to make you laugh at the end of the day in the tent or the hammock, and that's all you require. Whereas other trips, actually the personal side of things is maybe less important. What you need is someone that is technically absolutely brilliant at thing X or thing Y, and all you need them to do is do that thing really, really well. And it doesn't matter if they're socially incompetent. That's all right. So understanding what kind of team you need in order to make your expedition function is one of the most important things you can do. And you might decide, actually, the team I need is just me. I don't want to do this with anyone else. But then you're taking on a lot of responsibility if you are doing that by yourself. Like, inevitably, planning expeditions is hard and it's onerous, but it's also really exciting. Every email you send out might be the one that secures all the money you need for that expedition, or it might be the one that secures the contacts you need to open up permission to go to a place that no one's ever been before, or whatever it is. So all of this is exciting from the moment you come up with an idea, sat on the toilet or in the pub or wherever it is, to the moment you step on the plane or out the door or on the bicycle, whatever it is, to go to the place to do that thing. It's all exciting, but it's all hard work. But then that's fine. Hard work's all right anyway. That's what we're good at.
Yeah. We've all got to work hard at something at some point. So.
Absolutely.
I definitely feel like a common theme through all of the episodes I've done is one of the hardest things is the funding. But at the same time, the way I can't remember exactly how we did it for Zambia, but we did what was it? We did school fairs sort of thing, raising money for the charity, etc. Bake sales, sweet things, that sort of thing. But yes, it's annoying to go and do that fundraising, but you're raising awareness for it at the same time. So you're kind of hitting two.
Totally. And of course, you're building up yet more stock of experience. All of a sudden, you've run a cake sale. You'd never run a cake sale before that. Now you've done this, and you get so much more satisfaction out of going through that process of fundraising. Making it happen. My goodness, when that email does arrive that your cake sale made £500 and you can now afford to go to Zambia, or that Berghouse are going to sponsor your expedition across Vatnajökull and you don't have to worry about paying for the ice trucks to drop you off. Or like when you get that email, or if you see that come off, it's wonderfully satisfying. And like we've been talking about throughout this chat, hard work gets you there, and the hard work is also quite fun. A lot of the time, even when it's hard things are good for us often, and we shouldn't be deterred by the fact that something's hard work.
Yeah, definitely. I've been quite lucky to have that not drilled into me, but my parents have just been massive advocates for that, and I'm so glad that I've kept that going in my headspace as well. Hard work is always fun. As long as, it's not always fun. I'm not going to say that.
Terrible.
Yeah. But I will say, just trying to or slightly more environmentally friendly, open that door by just trying to open it yourself is probably the biggest thing to get anywhere.
Yeah. I think when I was growing up, I was always waiting for someone to give me that golden key. And I always thought, someone else will do it. And so I better keep on trying up until the point when someone does give me that key. And what I've realised is that no one's going to give you that key. You just have to keep on trying.
Bingo.
So constantly trying to make things work and have a positive impact and have a impactful, successful life is really important, because most people won't be given a golden key. You will just have to work for it. But
you have to go out. Yeah. I mean, the only way I even started a conversation with you was through that one email I sent about, a year and a half ago? No, a year and a bit ago or something. And I've gone from that to have my own podcast, have a new one. And to have like people like you, people like flipping two-time Olympic champion Dimitri Kudya. I'm like, what? But it is proof in the pudding. There is a way to get it. You just have to keep on going.
Totally. If you dream it, you can do it.
What would you say are some of the biggest obstacles in the actual natural world, aside from obviously the funding for everything, and how did you overcome them on your expeditions / other trips?
Yeah, I guess the nature-based expeditions I've done, one of the things you always have to overcome is local cynicism about why a white guy from England, or Wales now, why a white guy from the UK has come all the way to wherever to do a thing, and why on earth they should help you. And totally understandably, I've experienced quite a bit of local cynicism around that. And even to this very day, so I now run this conservation organisation, and when was it, 7 years ago, we approached the government of Zimbabwe saying, we would like to help you manage one of your national parks. And they're like, why on earth would you want to come over here and help us manage one of our national parks? We're perfectly good at doing that ourselves, thank you very much. And quite understandably, they had that response. But 7 years of hard work later, we have just signed a 20-year agreement with the government of Zimbabwe to manage that national park in partnership with them, which is a wonderful thing. So we always have to be able to have a good reason for doing the things that we're trying to do when we're in someone else's culture. And if you can bring skills and expertise and resources that are in short supply in those places, then fantastic. You need to bring something to that party, though, and you also need to respect that you're in someone else's culture, someone else's country, and that you need their permission to do this. So going to places with real respect and not just steamrolling over them is vital. Otherwise, you'll just get shut down, and rightly so. Rightly so. I've had some quite difficult conversations in village huts on the edge of places I've been wanting to work, where the local people are not quite sure they want me to go and work there actually very much. And I really need to justify myself. And being friendly and being open and humble has really, really helped along that way. And accepting that they're in charge, but that you also have a good reason for being there. And that what you are going to do will contribute, and making that point strongly while being respectful has helped me along the way.
I think it goes without saying that the whole key of respect is so crucial to anything, no matter who I've spoken to or no matter who I've been taught by, etc. You have to make a good first impression, because that will go a long way. And obviously people talk, but if people are talking about you in the right way, so many more doors will open. Or at least I found that to be the case.
Totally. And building that black book of contacts, that network of yours, is probably the other most important thing you can do in your career. And if you're really nice, if you're good company, if you're respectful, you're humble, you're honest, that goes a very long way to building a large network of people that are keen to work with you, keen to help you out, or whatever it is. And it's by being an arsehole, you can quickly shut down some career options too.
Yep. It's easy to acknowledge the depth of planning that must go into your expeditions and other trips. However, if anyone listening is now inspired to go out on adventure for themselves, where do you think they should begin?
Just start near your own home. I think, honestly, you can have so many amazing adventures just close to home. And having my daughter's been the best thing, for so many reasons, it's been the best thing. But for me to really appreciate how much we have on our doorstep, adventuring with a 5-year-old, or a 4-year-old, 3-year-old, 2-year-old, has been just the best thing for me to really appreciate where we live. We live in South Wales, and we've got farmland behind the house. I can get onto cycle lanes very, very quickly, into the bridleways, get up into the hills pretty quickly. It's opened up so many possibilities. You can see behind me that there's a map, and so that's the map. Our house is in the middle, and 10 kilometres either side. And anyone can go onto Ordnance Survey website, drop a pin, and create a map like that around their house. And we've explored almost every one of those squares around there, just getting to know our local area, and I've loved it. I've absolutely loved it. Just getting to know here. And then there's so much to do in the wider United Kingdom. There really is. North Wales is fantastic. If you want to get a bit more rugged, the potential for getting yourself into real trouble. North Wales is very good for that. People get into trouble in South Wales a lot as well. Like the SAS train in South Wales for a reason. Very easy to get into trouble here. And then once you start pushing up into the Highlands and Islands of Scotland, my goodness, you're in really wonderful terrain. And if you're in the middle of the Cairngorm Plateau, you can be a long way away from people as well in places there. So we've got so much wondrous terrain here in the UK on the land and around our coasts. But then if you're willing to go a little bit further afield and head abroad, then Europe is just astonishing. My goodness, the Alps are absolutely beautiful. Parts like Chamonix are really popular for a reason, because they're spectacular, easy access into the mountains. But then you can go to alpine ranges slightly further away, like the Jura, where not many people are going. So you have these glorious alpine meadows and peaks more or less to yourself. And there's so much to be done in Europe as well. Further afield, somewhere I've not yet been, but is really, really high on my list, is Romania, to see what wildflower meadows actually look like.
Yeah, instead of just a window street. Yeah.
Totally, yeah. Like go to the Carpathians and have the potential of seeing bears and wolves and lynx and these types of things. Or if you're up in Estonia and you can see bison in the forest, like there's these wonderful, wonderful places of real wilderness, beautiful, pristine terrain still left in Europe. Much less so in the UK in terms of pristine, because everything's the terminology is improved, but definitely not an improvement from what it was. There's something wonderfully satisfying about standing on a local hill and looking around you and knowing where everything is and what it's called and how you get from A to B. I absolutely love that.
I really feel lucky to have grown up where I have, and I'm sure your daughter will too.
Yeah, I think she's growing up with a love of her country as well, and a love of being able just to get out and do fun things straight away. If you want to pop into the woods behind the house, make a fire and roast some marshmallows, then we can do that. And that's a real privilege to have that opportunity.
For me, it's exactly the way my catchphrase for my podcast is, just get out and explore what's beyond your front door.
Yeah.
Because I think that's so true.
Yeah, lots of people think that you have to go to the Amazon to experience nature, or you have to go to Everest to experience adventure. But we can have amazing encounters with nature on our doorstep just by stepping out of the house. And you can have wonderful adventures just by putting your walking boots on and going for a stroll. We don't need to go to far-flung places to have these wonderful, affirming experiences. And we should try to have as many of those as close to home as we possibly can. I came across a slug eating another slug the other day, just outside my front door, and my daughter and I watched it for 5 or 10 minutes. Absolutely brilliant. Nature, red in tooth and claw.
You're involved in so many different projects that raise awareness for nature conservation and the outdoors. For those listeners, what is the Chisarira National Park and why is it so special to you?
Chisarira National Park is Zimbabwe's 4th largest national park. And when I first visited it in April 2017, it was on its knees, really. It had already lost all of its rhinos. So it used to have big five. The big five animals in Africa are rhinos, elephants, lions, leopards, and buffaloes. So Chisarira used to have big five, but it lost all of its rhinos in a killing spree mainly perpetrated by Zambian poachers in the late 80s and early 90s. So it lost them all by 1994. And then between 2001 and 2017, it lost about 4,000 elephants, meaning there were just a few hundred left, 500 max, probably fewer. Similar numbers of buffalo had been lost. Lions were teetering on the brink, leopards in really, really low densities, all other wildlife struggling. Poaching was absolutely soaring, and the staff there were neglected, sent there because it was a punishment station. Yeah, they were browbeaten, downtrodden. The park had no resources. And this was the park that my colleague Mark and I approached the Zimbabwe government for and said, listen, can we help you manage this and turn the park around? And it took a bit of convincing, but they let us start working there in April 2018. And in very close collaboration with the Zimbabwe Parks and Wildlife Management Authority, over the subsequent almost 7 years now, we've completely turned that park around. So we've reduced elephant poaching by 94%, which is, I guess, one of the headline statistics. But the way you do that is by hugely investing in people. That's local people providing jobs and trade. So we're the largest local employer, and we do almost all of that, the trade for the park, with local businesses and retailers. You invest in the people in the park. So the rangers and the other staff, you make them feel valued. You provide them with better living conditions, good employment opportunities, and make them enjoy their job. If they want to go to work, then they'll do their job really well. So we've put a huge amount of time and effort into the people of Chiserera. And as a consequence, the animals of Chiserera have bounced back. So we've got 1,100 more elephants now than we did when we started, which is pretty amazing. And that's too many for them to have just got to that stage through natural reproduction. It means we've had a lot of elephant immigration as well. And the reason that happens is because elephants are no mugs. They don't hang around somewhere where they're getting shot at, and they go to the places where they're safe. And they figured out they're safe in Chiserera now, so they've come to us, and they've refuged there. And we're starting to see other species booming in numbers as well. The plains game like impala and waterbuck, the numbers of those have gone through the roof, which is wonderful. Lions are doing really well. Leopards seem to be stable and rising. So yeah, everything's going in the right direction. And just in September 2024, so what's that, 2 months ago now, just over 2 months ago, I signed a 20-year contract with the government of Zimbabwe to co-manage that national park, which is just amazing. So it's somewhere that I've dedicated much of the last 7 years of my life to trying to resuscitate. We now have the opportunity to take that to the next level and make it a beacon of conservation across Africa.
I think, for me, that's the perfect example of what we've been talking about throughout this. It's just the hard work and you'll get it, genuinely. And the fact that you've managed to turn, how you said it, turn it from being on its knees to this incredible, even though I haven't been there yet, I will hopefully go at some point.
It's spectacular, worth a visit.
I can imagine, to this incredible sort of, but like paradise, animal paradise, really.
Yeah, it's not without its challenges still. We still have high levels of poaching pressure that we're having to manage all the time, but that keeps you on your toes. And one of the things about having a successful conservation operation and seeing animal numbers rise is that, of course, then poachers are like, well, there's loads more animals in there now. So if you get loads more elephants, all of a sudden ivory poachers start paying attention. If in the future we bring rhinos back, which we would love to do, that puts a really big target on your straight away. If you've got rhinos anywhere, it's such a valuable commodity, rhino, that you have to seriously up your game in terms of security. So, yeah, our work, we're 7 years in, but I think our work's only really just started.
But there's so much more. Yeah, I think that's the whole point about nature, really. Eventually, it will come back, whether some people like it or not, because it will win.
If we give it the space, that's the thing. It's amazing. Exactly. You look at places like Chernobyl, where people pulled out, obviously, after the nuclear fallout. Wildlife has bounced back there. with astonishing results. And there are so many other examples of that. If you give wildlife space, it bounces back really rapidly.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, especially when you try and link it to humanity, like ourselves. Like, we need space to grow. We need space to figure stuff out for ourselves. Because more often than not, it's human nature to kind of want to be together. And at the same time, we'd be in a lot better situation if we were more aware and more together with animals, or like the different beasts, etc.
I think what people are starting to realise is that human health, animal health, and environmental health are all one health. We all need to be thriving for each of us to be thriving. And COVID was a perfect example of that. It was a breakdown in conservation, zoonotic virus, which led to the economic collapse and societal crippling as a result of a zoonotic disease. If we had paid better attention to the environments in which those animals came from and better attention to the health of those individual animals, we wouldn't have had that zoonotic event which led to COVID. And there are so many other examples of that. The rate of emergence of new infectious disease has increased by about 4 times since 1950 as a result of us delving into nature more and disrupting nature more. If we allow nature to recover, we will reduce the prospect of the next pandemic. And I think that's really important for us to remember. And there's so many other things as well. Like your work in flood mitigation. The best way to mitigate floods is to have really, really stable watersheds with lots of trees in the watersheds and rivers that aren't canalized, rivers that actually have vegetation in them that slow the flow. So allowing nature to thrive in the watersheds and in our waterways is the best way to mitigate flooding, let alone climate change, increasing temperatures, allowing higher levels of moisture to exist in the atmosphere. We need to be trying to reduce that. And the way we do that is we protect nature. Many people are still of the false opinion that environmentalism is a zero-sum game, that if you put the environment first, somehow that means people lose out. And that's absolutely a falsity. Environmentalism is not zero-sum. It's additive. If you put the environment first, everyone wins. We cannot survive without a functioning environment. The World Economic Forum estimates that somewhere around 50% of global GDP is moderately or highly dependent upon nature. That's absolute bollocks. All of GDP is dependent upon nature.
Yeah.
Everything is dependent upon nature. So we absolutely need nature in order to survive, let alone to thrive. The thought that it's zero sum is just terrible false accounting, and we need to be prioritising nature in order to save ourselves.
I do really want to emphasise what you just said as well. It's all of these falsehoods, all of these misinterpretations of what the actual truth is. The actual truth is we need to protect the environment because we are run on it. We are run by it, and we're not run on it, if that makes sense to everyone listening.
The way I put it is we are a part of it, not apart from it. And I think that's really important.
That's probably better. Let's play a game of Sweet Truth. So, Niall, your task is to tell me 3 things. 1 truth and 2 falsehoods about any experience you've had in nature. Either I get the sweet victory of picking the truth, or you get the sweet victory of persuading me to pick incorrectly.
Okay. I've been hospitalised once as a result of a venomous snake bite. I have had malaria on 7 occasions. I've had I've had a lion wake up out of its anaesthetic right next to me.
But, okay. With the snake bite, what species was it?
Unpleasantly, it was a thing called Godman's mountain pit viper, which lives in the mountains of Honduras.
How did you get it 7 times though?
You get it once and then it recurs, unfortunately. So I didn't get falciparum. If you get Plasmodium falciparum, you get that once, but really dangerously, and then it doesn't recur. But if you get one of the other Plasmodiums, then it can recur forever. So I'm likely to get it sometime in the future as well, because it just goes cyclically.
Well, I hope if that's true, I won't ever get that again. And the third one was
having a lion waking up next to me.
Okay. So now it's judgment time. I'm going to go... I don't think it's the tiger. Yeah, I'm just going to go with the malaria one. That's the truth.
I'm afraid that was false.
Oh, rats. Damn it. What's the truth, though?
The truth was the lion. So the lion woke up out of anaesthetic right next to me. We had... the whole story was I was in Uganda and we were collaring lions. And the day before we had collared one. And then when the vet went to give it the reversal agent for the anaesthetic, it took 2.5 hours to wake up, which was really worrying, because you've got to stay with the lion the whole time while it's unconscious in case it gets trampled by buffaloes or elephants or something. So we had to be there until well after dark, where the lion was still asleep, and we were worried that it wasn't going to come out. And then it did wake up and it went off. So the next day we darted the next lion, and the vet used much less anaesthetic. And then when she gave it the reversal agent, it woke up after about 45 seconds, at which point I was still standing right next to it.
Yeah.
I was literally 4 feet away. I had a GoPro camera filming by its head, and you see when the lion wakes up and it looks at me, and I see it at the same time. I spring one way and it springs the other, thankfully.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, pretty heart-stopping moment. She was fine afterwards. She was just absolutely furious at the time.
Yeah, I can imagine. Experience you just had. You've had some pretty incredible experiences out in nature, other than, almost getting mauled by a lion. What is your most memorable moment, just so people listening can live vicariously through you?
The most memorable of all was being charged by a tiger. I've been lucky enough to have that happen twice, and on both occasions it didn't feel scary, it just felt awe-inspiring. When a tiger roars, the whole forest shakes. Or the bones in your bodies are also vibrating like that. And having a tiger stare at you in the eyes and roar and then bear down upon you, and then thankfully at the last minute curve off and not complete its charge, was the most astonishing experience I've ever had in nature.
That is scary, but also kind of beautiful at the same time, because it just shows not only how nature can play with you if it wants to, and it just shows how powerful nature is and what we need, and and why we need to respect it so much. Where's your next adventure? And where is it?
My next big adventure is to Baffin Island in the Canadian Arctic. But between now and then, I'll have a couple of trips to Africa probably, and lots of local adventures with my daughter. So I'll be adventuring all around the map behind me with my daughter, which I can't wait for. And then with my job, I'll be out in Zimbabwe and Mozambique in the new year, and then probably sometime in the spring. And then next summer, July to August, I'll be out on Baffin Island to go and climb a mountain called Mount Asgard. It's one of the most beautiful mountains on Earth. It was first climbed in an expedition in 1953, and the expedition was led by our grandfather. He actually didn't summit that mountain. It was summited by 4 Swiss guys, including the man that became the second ascensionist of Everest and the first ascensionist of Lhotse. But my grandfather was there, and then he went back in 63 with my mum, 71 with the guy called Doug Scott, who's one of Britain's most famous mountaineers, and several other times, but never set foot on the top of that mountain. And next summer, my brother and I are going to go, take 4 weeks, because it's in the middle of nowhere, 4 weeks to go an expedition to this place, set up our camp, lay siege to the mountain, and hopefully climb the mountain in honour of our grandfather. And then if we get really lucky, and if the weather is kind to us, then we'd love to try and put up a new climbing route, either on that mountain or on one in the vicinity, to name it after our grandfather in homage to his legacy.
Mm. I think the point of view and legacy is such a thing that, what's the word, not only the
Pervasive.
legacy, that's it, yeah. The legacy of us, but also the legacy of nature and how important it is to sort of blend it together. And I mean, if you hopefully do that, which I'm pretty sure you will, would you mind coming back and telling us all about it when you next can?
Love to. Yeah, a few years ago. I wrote a list of things I wanted to do in my life, like a list of top 20 things or something. Someone, as part of a mindfulness workshop, someone asked us to write that, and this was number one on the list. And so it's been in my mind for a very, very long time, and I cannot wait to get out there. And so I'm at that stage now. This is a complicated expedition to organise. It's in the middle of nowhere. I've got to be shipping food and equipment out in March, and we're actually only going out in July. It's a very complicated thing to be doing. I've got all these emails going out for sponsorship, and of course, most of them won't be responded to. But it's also at that really exciting stage as well, where it's all starting to happen. It's all feeling very, very real, and yeah, I can't wait. And I'm doing it with my brother, which makes it even more amazing. So to spend 4 weeks in the Arctic just with my brother, very unlikely there's going to be any other human beings within many, many, many miles of us. That's going to be a pretty special experience too.
Yeah. On the topic of your brother and how passionately you've spoken about your daughter, how does it feel to be inspiring the next generation of explorers, and what piece of advice would you leave them?
It's hugely important to me to set a positive example to my daughter. That the biggest thing I want for her is for her to feel that anything is possible, and that if she turns her mind to anything, if she wants to be a ballet dancer, or if she wants to be a biologist, I don't mind. As long as she turns her mind to whatever she's most passionate about, anything is possible. And so that's the best advice I can give her is that hard work gets you there. Hard work's good. And that follow your dreams and keep your eyes on the prize. And that prize should be leaving the world in a better state than when you found it.
Exactly. Yeah. I could not agree more. And because for me, I'm quite a big Disney kid, and it sort of stems from, if you can dream it, you can do it, which is, I think, the reason why franchises like that and the work you're doing is so big and so important to not only, me as an adult, I say an adult, I'm barely in my 20s, but it's so crucial to everything. You just need to go out and believe you can do it. And more often than not, if you stick at it, put the work in, you will.
Amen.
Where can people find out more about who you are and what you do, or the organisations you help out with? Yeah,
of course. I have my own personal website is NIALLMcCANN.com. I'm on Instagram as at Dr. NIALL McCANN. And my organisation at the moment is under nationalparkrescue.org, but we are about to be changing name and brand. So if you Google defend.earth, that'll link to the right site. So we're changing name to Defend, and the URL is defend.earth.
One last task. Please write down and send to me one nature-based phrase that I must get into my next episode without me knowing. That can either be, obviously, through email or at my Instagram at max.taddles or at Maximise Nature.
One nature-based phrase?
Yep.
Okay, I'll send it to you straight away because I know it.
Perfect.
Okay, I'll send that to you straight away.
Perfect. And did you guess the one that the legend Dimitri Coutier gave me for this week?
Oh, right, bugger. I have to remember every word. I wasn't expecting to be spotting a phrase. There was one thing that stood out where you'd obviously planned to say something, a very specific, small thing, and then moved on. But I can't remember what it was. But it stood out in my head. No, I can't remember it.
Drum roll, please.
Yep, go for it.
It was. The goal is to be consistent.
Okay, that's not what I was thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not what I was thinking. There was one other thing you said where it seemed very obvious that you'd obviously you planted a phrase and then you said kind of moving seamlessly on. So and then you moved on to that. But no, it wasn't the goal. The goal is to be consistent. I definitely didn't recognise that.
Perfect. Okay. I'm currently 8 for 8. Long may that continue. And
Very
if
good.
anyone listening got it, congratulations. Hope you kind of don't get it next time, but we moved. Niall, thank you so much for coming on the episode. You are truly inspiring, and I know your daughter feels the same way. And listeners, please check out my Instagram reels and any other information on my Instagram page at Maximise Nature and any podcasts, because there are quite a lot which I feel like you will get a lot out of. Thank you guys. Until next time, get out and explore what's beyond your front door. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow Maximise Nature on Instagram for more nature-based content. See you next time.